Everything was perfect. Even the half-underground house for one person, which is the size of the bathroom of the house I lived before. The fact that I had to work starting next was also not a matter to me. I've finally escaped from that hell-like house and got my freedom. I could live happily just from that one thing. But I'm pretty sure I told you to live as quiet as a mouse without any fuss, with not even your breathing sound could be heard. A man opened his mouth. His hateful gaze on me seemed as if he was seeing a hideous bug. I heard that you acted like a mad dog at the Crown Prince's return ceremony banquet. Those icy, deadly gaze seeming like it wants to kick me to death was familiar to me. It was the kind of gaze I always got from that house. However, it didn't mean I was fine, even though I had experienced it a lot. What was your purpose for acting like that? I couldn't breathe right at his aura. My lips started to tremble in fear. It was then a white chart appeared in front of my face. And I could see the words written line by line in the chart. 1. How do I know? 2. I didn't have a purpose. 3. With a pitiful tone of voice. Well, that's. What is this? I was going to ask what this was, however, as if something was stuck in my throat, I couldn't let out a sound. The man's voice threatened me when I just stood there without speaking a word. You better speak. I felt the deadly aura to the point it hurt my skin. I'll die when I don't give an answer. I unconsciously pressed the number 3 on the white chart. Well, that's the same words on the chart automatically came out my mouth without my wills. What's this? My mouth opened idiotically, still not believing what I just said. I couldn't guess what kind of situation I was in right now. I was in an unfamiliar place when I woke up and came to face these unfamiliar people whom all held deadly aura. I couldn't think a thing, as if I just woke up from sleeping. Well, that's next. The man didn't seem to like the incomplete answer, as he commanded me for the actual answer with a scary face. It was then when the new sentences eventually appeared in the chart. 1. I'm sorry, I'll act properly next time. 2. A stupid maid was the one to start all the fuss. 3. The lowly ones treated me low. The me who is the only daughter of Eckhart. I didn't have time to sit around thinking of what was going on right now. I hurriedly picked an answer while taking hint of the mood here. Even though I know nothing, I must speak of something in this situation. This was the result of my reaction from all the painful experiences back then. I'm sorry. We wouldn't have met each other like this in the first place if it was something that'd all be solved with a simple apology. My line was cut by him right away. My heart reached the bottom from the stabbing tone of voice he used. I curled my body up instinctively. Then the man spoke in an icy tone. Penelope Eckhart. Penelope Eckhart will withdraw our name Eckhart from you for some time. The line and the name was very familiar. I raised my head in a lightning speed. Then I could clearly see the face of the man I couldn't see well before. The man, who was some distance away from the bed, was not one of the people of that house, but a foreigner who I've never seen before. The blue eyes that reflects the ocean and the black hair that reminds me of obsidian. Above them was a long bar that was similar to the phone's battery sign with the white word that sparkled. Interest. If my eyes are perfectly fine, then the white sparkling words above the man's head definitely said interest. Definitely no parties or banquet during that time, and you're absolutely not allowed to leave the room. You think over what you did wrong and think of what you do from now on during. Where are you looking at? The man's emotionless face turned to a frown, as if he was unpleasant with me staring at something else than where I was supposed to look. However, I couldn't react to that, and only kept on checking the bar above the man's head. Interest 0%. No way. I unconsciously shook my head couple of times. It was really unbelievable, really. The rumors saying that you went insane was true. The man glared at me for a moment from my weird actions before turning away from me. He walked toward the door with big and fast steps, as if he didn't want to stay in the same place with me for even a second more. Interest 0% is moving away from me. What did I do wrong? It was the time I think about what this situation was about while staring at the back of the leaving figure. I felt someone's eyes on me with the aura seeming to mock me with a smirk. I turned my head to see another person with pink hair standing with his arms crossed in the shadow by the door. He had the same blue eyes as the person who just left. His face held a smile that seemed to ridicule. Interest -10%. The white words sparkled above the boy's figure. It's even a negative. Fool, bitch serves you right. Unlike how he has a pretty face, he swore some nasty bad words and left the room, following the man who previously left. Thud the door slammed. I stayed seated with my head blank for a long while in the room where only I existed. My head didn't work well and I still couldn't figure out the situation I was in currently. I thought for a while and realized that the place I was in and the two people I just saw were both somewhat familiar to me. It's a lie, right? I could finally speak what I wished to speak when I was left alone, but I didn't have time to notice that. I couldn't believe this. This was not something that happens every day for me too. There's no way though. It can't be that the scene from a game I was playing before falling into sleep was replaying like it's reality, and with me as one of the characters in the game. I'm dreaming right now. There didn't exist another case for this other than that. However, no matter how much I pulled on my hair and pinched my face, I still couldn't wake up from this dream. No, I say no. Penelope Eckhart, she was the villainess of the most popular game for girls these days and the heroine of the difficult mode. Them feeling regret that they bothered their sisters and the protagonist attacking their hearts little by little was enough for me to dive into this game and drown in it. Me, who once chose to take a look at the game, was now drowning into the game. Reaching the ending was easy, even though it was my first playing these kind of game. It was fun, I agreed on that. However, the normal mode was way too easy even for a beginner like me. From the start, all the male lead's interest towards the heroine started with 30%. It was to the point it could be called easy mode and not normal. I saw every character's ending within 3 hours of time. Then a card popped on the screen which said the hidden ending with a drawing of luck on it. $100. Are they crazy? Why is it so expensive to see the hidden ending? You needed to either pay a crazy high price for it or finish the hard modes of each characters. Shit, it's already midnight though. I thought about the class I had early in the morning, however that didn't go for long. Whatever, let's get it done with. I was insane being controlled by the game. I wouldn't have done anything like this usually. My fingers excitedly clicked on the hard mode button. The different prologue video played, this time with a grand BGM. The heroine changed to her. It was unexpected that the heroine changed in this mode. She was the villain from the normal mode, the fake mistress of the Duke family. The story was set before the heroine of the normal mode appeared, so it felt like a whole different story from a different game. Maybe this is why this game's so popular. The detailed illustration of the heroine in the hard mode appeared on my screen. That woke me up for good. The unique system of this game was not like any other game. This made me be more interested in this app. The villain, who was evil to the angel-like heroine, was the one who was winning the hearts of the strictly love-breed male leads now. That gave me the excitement and heart flutters that I couldn't quite explain. I proceeded to the main story of the hard mode. I was overly confident about this since I finished all the normal mode routes. Even though it was called a hard mode, I expected that the choices of lines would be just a bit more difficult to choose. However, that was just my mistaken guess. Why did I die again? Hard mode was extremely difficult. The heroine, who was the villainess from the first place, it was set that raising the character's interest was freaking hard. It wasn't only that the interests raised with my hard work all dropped down to game over after just one smallest mistake. Not just a normal game over thing, but very disturbing death of the heroine. Why did this have to be so extreme? The illustration was also so realistic and cruel. I frowned at the illustration of the heroine getting sliced on the neck by the crown prince. This mad game, I died several times due to the hard choices I made. Sincerely in the game, frustration filled my heart at this horrible system. What was the producer thinking making the difficulty setting like this? I died so many times that I started to feel the stress playing this. Please let me live for once, please. My goal was to unlock the hidden ending, however it was long ago since that goal was forgotten. I will have to see this poor pitiful villainess not die and live happily with at least one of the male leads. What makes the villainess the guilty one? Honestly, it was the author who made her the villainess. Unlike the heroine from the normal mode who've gotten everyone's love no matter which choice I made in, the villainess who was only abused and mistreated no matter how much she begged for love reminded me of my life before. I'm seeing the endings to this. No matter what, I was killed again due to the older bastard brothers. The sound of me gritting my teeth was heard in the room. I don't remember how much I died here now. My two hands, which clenched my heated up phone, trembled. I thought that I was getting too emotional to this, but I couldn't stop my fingers clicking the reset button. I started all over again from the start. I chose the lines slowly raised their interests and gotten fame, glamour, and money to open up the new route. Why, but I died again. I was annoyed to the point I had a thought of just buying the interest using money. If the producer's goal was to make others pay for the damn thing, then they succeeded greatly. Since they made me, who treasures money like no one else does, want to use up my money for this, I didn't use my money till the end, but I was on fire the whole night to see the ending of at least one of the characters. Die and start over, die again and start over. Die and die again. I only died until the sunrise, however I wasn't able to see the ending of any of them till then. Fuck again, me who was going to press the reset button again couldn't handle it anymore as I fainted to sleep with my phone in my hand. And when I opened my eyes, Penelope Eckhart, said the man with the blank gauge bar above him with the sparkling letters written interest 0%. We'll withdraw our name Eckhart from you for some time. I was the villainess in the game which I never got to see the ending of. Lady, wake up now, I heard someone whispering above me. Even though I was fast asleep, I was able to wake up even by the smallest presence of someone. I refused to believe in what had happened to me, which kept me awake all night hoping that this was all just a dream. I wished so hard for me to wake up from it, and I think I fell asleep during the process of that. Lady, the cautious voice was heard again. Is she calling me? The two men with blue eyes left already, and from what I remember no one was in this room except for me till the very last moment I was awake. For that reason the one who could be called a lady was me alone. I was drowsy when I was lost in my thoughts that I couldn't answer the call right away. It was a moment later when I heard a rustling sound from the back. I was somewhat awake from sleep now. I was about to put my strength to my body to get myself up from the bed. A lightning-like pain was felt on my forearm from outside the comforter. My eyes automatically flashed open. I screamed as I got up from the spot, kicking the comforter away. Next I pulled my sleeves up. It was to check my pained forearm. This I was shocked to see the flesh shown under the light sky blue pajama sleeves, making my jaws drop. The thin forearm was covered with blue bruised scar of the needles. If it weren't a human flesh, but some kind of fabric, it would have had lots of visible holes on it. It was when I was still shocked by the sight of a drop of blood on one of my forearm. You're awake now, unconcerned casual voice came from beside the bed. I turned my head towards that direction to see a brown-haired girl with lots of freckles. She was a maid. In the illustrations every maid's had no faces drawn, and all wore the same maid outfit, including the girl standing in front of me. I don't know where she hid the needle she poked me with, but there was nothing in her hand. She was observing me with the face of mockery and some kind of satisfaction. What's up with her doing this kind of thing to a person who was doing absolutely nothing? I opened my mouth in desire to snap at her. However, no words came out of my mouth no matter how hard I tried. Why isn't anything helping me out in this kind of situation, damn it? When I only glared at her with no words said, the maid acted as if nothing happened. I've prepared the bathing water for you in the bathroom, so go and wash yourself first, lady. An evil smile was reflected on her face as she started to make the bed. She seemed to be used to doing this to this body. I sat still, biting on my lower lip, but was forced to enter the bathroom due to the maid's push. She told me she prepared the bathing water, but the only thing in the empty bathroom was a bucket filled with cold water. It was freezing cold, like ice water, that it gave me goosebumps just by dipping my fingertip, and I didn't expect any service in helping me bathe, but this is just too extreme. There were some stories about how the villainess got the worst ever treatment, but nothing explained something this specific. I was once again forced to realize from the overflowing feeling of reality that I've actually entered the game. I pulled up the sleeve to see the scar with dried blood covering it again, and when I did I sort of teared up. What's this? Nothing like this was shown in the game. Suddenly an image popped up in my head as a reminder. It was an illustration of the villainess with the open-shoulder dress, unlike the other illustrations that had not the smallest mistakes in it. On the illustration of the villainess had several small dots drawn on the one forearm. Nuts, I thought those were actual birthmarks. If it weren't, then maybe it was something important that would be mentioned in one of the stories I failed to unlock. Who knew those were the traces proving all the abuses? Though this was unbelievable, I was once again surprised of how detailed the story was plotted. Lady, breakfast has been prepared. Are you done yet? The maid urged from the other side of the bathroom door. Says her who isn't a match for me. I felt annoyed, but with no choice I dipped my hand into the freezing cold water again. To me, who suffered the worst for years from my step-brother bastards, this was not even tickling. I was the villainess anyways, so while I was at it, I wanted to make needle marks on that bitch as she did to me, but I had to give it more time for me to investigate everything first. Because unfortunately I was in a state where I couldn't even speak freely of what I wanted to speak. The moment I stepped out the bathroom drying my face with the towel, I could see the table all set with some food on it like the maid had said. Seemed like I even had to eat my meal in the room, probably because I was grounded by the first son of the Duke. "Take a seat, lady." I was pulled by the maid's hand and sat on the seat by the table as soon as I did, though I couldn't do anything but to frown. The food prepared as a meal for a human didn't look edible at all. On the plate was a piece of blue moldy bread, and on the bowl was a kind of thick gray soup with undefined solids floating around. "Hurry up and eat, I know you're hungry." The maid smiled widely as she urged me to eat. I clenched my teeth and glared at her. A white square screen popped into view right in front of my eyes. Flipping the table. "What's this, you crazy? Bring me the chef right now." "Right now." Shove the fork in the maid's mouth. "You tell me to eat these that not even the dogs would eat, then how about you do it first?" Eat. I've experienced the game over twice. At this scene, when I chose one, every one of the workers ran to the Duke, acted pitiful, and poor to confess the villainous troublesome actions. The son who grounded the villainess hears about this and grows so furious that he prohibited anyone offering a single drop of water to me during the grounded days. So I died in hunger. On my next turn I chose to. Then the son of the Duke, who was just coincidentally passing by, jumped in to get the villainess off of the maid. During the process, the villainess, who was pushed, roughly fell, and the fork which fell on her afterwards stabbed her neck. It was really a ridiculous way to die. In the end, there's only one to choose. This scene is probably the episode which held the story about the relationships between the villainess, who became the heroine, and the workers here who worked in the mansion for a long time. However, me, who didn't want to see the scene where the heroine is mistreated from the start, just skipped the episode to the next one after dying twice. It was because there were tens of episodes I had to unlock anyways, even if it weren't this one right now, though in front of my eyes there were no return buttons that would take me to the page that enabled me to choose the episodes from. Damn, I sorrowfully glared at the maid standing next to me as I powerlessly clicked the number 3. Once I did, as if someone was controlling my body, I started to move automatically without my wills. My hands held onto the spoon and scooped up a spoonful of rotten soup. My wills of me not wanting to eat this may have affected my movements, as my hands with the spoon started to tremble on its way to my mouth. The drops of gray liquid fell on the table. No matter how strong my wills were, I couldn't stop my body from moving on its own. In the end, the spoon with the soup was shoved into my forcefully open mouth. The warm sensation of the gray liquid was felt on my tongue. At the same time, the horrible taste of it was sensed. This wasn't food, it was the taste of the boiled cup of organic garbage. My body continued to act on its own as it forcefully gulped down the garbage water which has entered my mouth down my throat. The maid who watched gasped as if she didn't expect me to really eat it. "Ugh, I feel like I'm going to vomit," I gagged. I was trying so hard to forget the feeling I was currently feeling. I'm guessing that once is enough. I wouldn't die just by consuming a spoonful of organic garbage. I let out a sigh of relief since I've safely got over an episode. It was my misunderstanding. My hand which held the spoon with didn't stop doing what's. Even afterwards I had to keep on shoving the moldy blue bread and the gray soup in my mouth. It was not due to my wills. The maid's face paled at the sight of me forcefully eat the overdosed foods. My body, which repeated those crazy motions, came to a stop when the Duke's son happened to come in. "What are you doing, young Master Reynold?" The maid came to panic at the sudden appearance of a figure. Me, on the other hand, didn't have the time to focus on that. I had to cover my mouth with both my hands so fast. I gagged so much I felt as if everything I've consumed today was going to come flooding out any moment now. Why do I have to experience these things? I've already experienced these things enough even before entering the game. How many times did I have to suffer all the pains given by the two bastards in that hell-like house? But I have to experience these things over again even in this fictional world. A strand of salvia escaped my mouth out through my palms. I felt myself tearing up due to this unfair situation and the disgust. I groaned like a person who just drank poison, seeing that the pink hair approached me with a shocked expression on his face. "Hey, are you okay?" He stopped in his words. He froze still with more shock shown on his face as he looked at what was set on the table. This moldy blue bread, rotten soup. It was a mess. No one would be able to guess that this was served to a lady from the Duke family. Not even the commoners would eat these garbage for breakfast. The sight of the half of those foods gone, and his pale younger stepsister covering her mouth. The face of the pink hair who turned his face to look back at the maid changed to a horrifying frown. Hey, what did you just feed her young master this as well? The maid turned pale at the deathly aura and started to shiver in fear. He obviously wouldn't have guessed. How would an extra who was just passing by have guessed that the fake lady who was always making a fuss of one or another would be eating the rotten food purposely prepared without any complaints? The pink hair snapped at the maid who wouldn't properly answer. This is more than enough humiliating to dare mock our family, a mere maid like you, doing these things to the one she's serving. Young master, that's a misunderstanding. Young master, get lost. Scram from this room. Young master, I'll kindly explain this whole thing to my father and brother. Is there someone out there, butler? Thinking that this life was a gift from the god for the pitiful me, however, I succeeded in enduring and finally escaping the dang house. I was accepted into the famous university that everyone in the world knows about. There was a house I could fully relax in, even though it was small and dirty. There were nothing left but things that would help me on the way to the brightest future after I left the two bastards. What I'm trying to say is that Penelope's life, which every littlest mistake takes me to my death, isn't any better. Never mind. Far worse. It would be a different matter if I at least was the heroine of the normal mode, whose every decision lead her to walk the flower path. But why to me, who've just succeeded in escaping the hell-like house? Just why? Slam! I screamed, slamming on the sink. The girl's beautiful face reflected on the mirror showed a horrifying expression. The sight of her looking more furious than sad certainly made her look like the greatest villain in the game. I sighed deep and ran my hand through my hair to flip it. I thought of things about Penelope. Penelope Eckhart, a villainess of one game, the heroine of the hard mode. Penelope was actually a commoner with no surname. Penelope, who grew up going from place to place with her poor mother, catches the interest of the Duke, who was desperately searching for his lost daughter. When her mother, who suffered an illness, passed away, she was adopted to the Eckhart Duke family. There was only reason she was able to turn into the lady of the Duke family. It was thanks to her appearance that matched the lost daughter of the Duke. The pink hair inherited by the dead Duchess, and the clear blue eyes which symbolized the Eckhart family. I thought of the second son of the Duke, whom I just saw not too long ago. His hair was the color of the lovely pink, however the hair color of the women in the mirror was more towards flame color than pink. And the turquoise-colored eyes that slightly differed from the rest of the family members. He should have continued finding his daughter. Why did he have to take in a random kid? As Penelope grew, she did not to look like his daughter anymore. The Duke soon lost his interest for her and locks her out of his sight. All that was left for Penelope, who lost the Duke's interest, was her two step-brothers and the workers abusing. It's so similar to my life to the point it feels unpleasant. Penelope's life and the treatments she got was awfully like mine. It was something I didn't notice when I was playing it as a game. I suddenly started feeling down. Fake lady. Every worker's working in this mansion called Penelope fake. Penelope herself was breathtakingly beautiful, but to others' eyes she was only a mere clone that didn't even look like the original. Maybe the story flowed differently if she acted cute towards others, but her personality hit the bottom even though she was only a girl who just coincidentally happened to enter the family. Flashing back to the prologue of the story, it was explained she was always on guard towards everyone, like a hedgehog with spikes up, and always caused trouble wherever she went to, no matter the place or the situation. I wondered why the choices of lines were all something that would surely cause a fuss. I nodded my head, finally understanding why all the choices I had to choose from were that insane. Penelope was actually a villain who seemed powerful just by her name, unlike how naive the normal mode heroine looked like. She looked so keen and sharp. But I sort of understood Penelope just today. No, just a few hours I've experienced the treatments she got for only for few hours, yet I think it was enough for me to understand how her life must have been. Even though she's called a fake, how could they wake her up poking her with needles? Even so, she's a girl picked up by the Duke himself. Not even one maid would wake the other maids that way. It was when she was 12 when Penelope was adopted to the Duke family. If she was abused from that day and on, there weren't that much things a little kid could do to the adults who wouldn't even listen to her words no matter how hard she shouted. Is this a proof trying to prove she's a meant-to-be villainess? Nothing could change the fact that she was abused all the time, even until today. No characters were the least merciful towards Penelope, and the motions that killed Penelope inside were rough and insane. I feel a bit sorry for her. I raised my hand and stroked Penelope's fragile soft cheek. The figure with strong shade of pink hair reflected in the mirror looked sorrowful. However, I got rid of the feeling of pity towards the other who's sorry about who. It wasn't the time to think about things in peace. I was Penelope now. It meant that I could die in the male character's hands anytime like that Penelope did in the game. It was fear that I felt when I reminded me of that. I searched for a pen and a piece of paper. As soon as I got out of the bathroom, I needed to figure out a way to survive as long as I'd become Penelope. In this hard mode it was hard to raise the interest of one, and a drop to a negative leads to death. It was even worse for the Duke's second son. His interest was already in the negative. It would be death that'll come for me if his interest didn't rise to a positive soon. There was a need for me to organize some information about the game. It was fortunate that the fake lady at least had some things she deserved as a lady. In the large room stood a luxury bookshelf and a desk. I didn't hesitate to go to it and take a seat. I dipped the end of the quill into the ink. Characters first. There were 5 male characters in total in the game: the 2 sons of the Duke, and the Crown Prince, the Wizard, the Knight. The hard mode started with their interests at 0%, or negative, unlike in the normal mode where it started with 30% of interest in each one. I started to write down everything I remembered on the blank sheet of paper. First, Derek Eckhart. He was the first son of the Duke, technically the young Duke of the family. Derek was a typical noble man. He was generally uninterested towards Penelope, as he was too busy preparing to be the next Duke of this family. However, there were strong and intense contempt and hatred towards her for taking his blood-related sister's place. In the game, Derek killing Penelope himself was rare. However, he didn't forget to punish her whenever she made a fault. Then the player will be given a penalty, and their choices of lines to choose from would be restricted. Just like today, I cannot leave the room due to the punishment given yesterday. Anyways, next, the youngest son of the Duke, Reynold Eckhart. This kid, well, there's really nothing much to explain. A very wacky and active guy with a bad temper, having a critical personality, and is always picking a fight with Penelope on every single thing whenever he encounters her. As he's the leader to those who abuse Penelope, him being first to abuse Penelope is not even surprising. What is surprising is that he's always the one who brings Penelope to her death through some unexpected weird ways. Now that I see, these two are somewhat similar to the bastards in our house, aren't they? I clicked my tongue going over the information of the 2 that I've written down. These 2 had the easiest routes to master in normal mode. It was because these 2 had family love and not lover's love for her, since they were blood-related. That being said, Penelope was not the least related to the 2 through blood, therefore it had the higher chance of having a different ending than in the normal mode. However, I shook my head. I scribbled a big X on their names I've written. They have no answers. These 2 are hopeless. Adding to that, Reynolds' interest starts at a negative. Not even a 0, but a negative. Why would negative be a negative? This was what the producer was telling me. There's no hope in the first place, so just give up on an ending with Reynold. Besides, I was a person who go nauseous even just hearing the word Appa, so I decided I'd fully give up on them. Next, the Crown Prince, Callisto Regulus, the Crown Prince. The only information I have about him were all from the normal mode. The Crown Prince who depreciates his life due to his unfortunate childhood events meets the angel-like protagonist and heals his heart before he punishes the villainous Penelope. That was a justice has been done, but from Penelope's perspective, the Crown Prince was a grim reaper. He was the one who killed Penelope the most. In the hard mode, I pressed the reset button so many times during his route that I don't even remember what happened in the whole game. Let's not even go close to where this guy is. I remembered the illustration with Callisto slicing my neck several times. I felt chills down my spine. Crisscross. I drew X on the Crown Prince's name many times. Then I quickly moved on to the next. The next was Binter Verdandi. He was a wizard and a marquis. As a wizard, he works with his identity as a marquis hidden. He exchanges information and mysterious objects, and thanks to that he is able to find out that the protagonist is the Duke's lost daughter. After that, he gains information about the villainess making evil plans. He either warns the protagonist or blocks the danger himself. Besides that, he was a character who was the most helpful in getting her honors and glamours. He presented romantic magics in normal mode. He was a sweet man who helped the protagonist from behind. But I don't know how he was in the hard mode. I was already busy dying from the Crown Prince and the two sons of the Duke before Binter's route even started. Anyways, he had some high possibilities and hopes unlike the three previous brats, so I decided to let it be for now. And last Eclipse, being a knight of the Duke family, Eclipse was a commoner. The Duke, who went out to the town at night, happened to see Eclipse, who was outstanding in swordsmanship, bought him at a high price to bring him in and make him into a knight in training. Later he becomes the youngest sword master, and is given a status as a noble. He wins the title of young and handsome guy. Eclipse was the one character you can most expect an ending from out of the 5 males. He was the only one who felt sympathy towards Penelope until the end. Penelope was his last master he had served, and I think that's why he was the one least to stop Penelope from bullying the protagonist, even though I never even met him in the hard mode. Ha ha ha, there's nothing much that'd help me at this point. I let out a deep sigh looking at my finished list. I didn't know much about the hard mode since everything blocked the way in it. Even if I did, I don't know if it'd be useful or not, since I don't know how the system may differ from the game in reality. The one thing I know for sure though is that I die when the male character's interest reaches negative, and that there's a time limit I have to reach an ending in. Penelope's coming of age ceremony, I must finish the route of at least one of the capture characters before that day. That's because it is that day when the protagonist makes her debut in the story. Per Penelope, she loses everything due to the real daughter of the Duke appearing just when she becomes an adult. That was the start of the normal mode. If I didn't end up with anyone until then I was most likely to die from one of them, even if I don't act like a villainess. Of course, there wasn't a guarantee that I wouldn't die before that even starts. I can't die. I clenched my teeth thinking about my sorrowful future. Yes, I can't die. I've just escaped from that rotten house. I can't just die in a game like this. I'll not die no matter what. My morning class at school is waiting for me. I'll live and go back to where I belong. I decided, blankly staring at I don't know what that I'd live. It was then knock knock. I heard the knocking sound from the door twice. Before I even had the time to hide the papers with the information I've written down, the door opened abruptly. Lady, the person who appeared in front of me was an old white-hair butler. He didn't come in but stood by the door as he spoke. His Grace is commanding for your presence. I knew that the words written on the paper wouldn't show in his eyes, but I felt unpleasant at his rude attitude. There was a manager when I lived at a house. Even though that manager didn't seem to like me, he didn't open the door like the butler did just now. Moreover, this world wasn't based on democracy but classism. I was deciding on whether I should just deal with it or do something about it. But before I decided on what to do, a white box appeared in front of my eyes. One, throwing the objects in the room. You dare open the door to my room without my permission? Do you wish for death? Oldie 2, if he has something to say, tell him to come himself. 3, glares at him for 5 seconds, then gets up. Okay. I forgot about it again, that I'm not in the state where I can get angry over things however I want. However, I also didn't want to act like what any of the 3 choices that are given to me are forcing me to do. I thought while choosing the third one as my option, annoyedly interest or whatever, I need to do something about this option chart. Okay, it was fortunate that the Duke was calling me at this time. I hid the papers I wrote on deep in the drawer before getting up from the spot. Then I followed the butler out my room. I only knew about this mansion through just a few illustrations, so I took this chance to carefully look around the places. The mansion was gigantic in size, just like some buildings you can see in a movie that showed a castle in Europe. Penelope's room was on the 2nd floor. Inside, the mansion seemed busy. I met quite a lot of workers while walking through the halls. The gazes of the workers who glanced at me when I walked by didn't seem kind. However, I ignored them without any fuss. These kind of gazes don't even bother me the least, since I've felt these gazes way too much before I even came here. The butler who was leading the way got down to the 1st floor and soon arrived at the well-decorated door. It seemed to be the Duke's office. Knock knock. Your Grace, I escorted the lady here. Come in. The door opened. With the butler opening the door, I stepped in the room feeling a bit nervous. Actually, there wasn't anything to be nervous about. It's only a single scene from a game. Even so, my hands continued to quiver a little. It was due to me subconsciously being reminded of my blood-related dad, remembering the attitude of the Duke towards Penelope in the game. I was fully in the room now, but the Duke didn't even raise his head. I hesitantly approached his desk and stood. I hid my quivering fingers and bowed down for a greeting. There weren't this much details within the game. However, my voice didn't come out, so there was no way I could show my presence through speaking. Also, I felt like this is what I had to do, judging by the aura. "You've come." The Duke finally took a glimpse of me by slightly raising his head. He had the same black hair and blue eyes as those that Derek had. His face showed no emotions, just like the high-status nobles shown in the illustrations in the game. At the same time, a white box popped up in my view. 1. Why have you called? 2. I'm busy. Please get straight into the point. 3. Glare without any words said. I pressed on the choice number 1 out of the rest of the insane answers. Why have you called? I heard there was a fuss today morning. As soon as his sentence reached the end, the choices in the box quickly shifted to some new choices. 1. Your Grace has nothing to do with it. 2. You probably want this fuss happening. 3. It wasn't my fault. This was all that stupid maid's doing. I lost control of my mentality reading those choices. These insane choices, of course. This was something I've experienced once before when I was playing the game in the other world. I was happy to press on the second one as my choice, my plan being I will make Penelope a sassy chic femme fatale. However, thinking that this came back to me in this reality left me speechless, even though I still am titled as a villainess. Which father on earth would treat his not even blood-related daughter so well? Shit. When I didn't speak for a while and just stood on the spot, the Duke put down his pen he was holding and lifted his head up to see me. He held a sharp and keen aura within his eyes as he looked at me. I hope this decision does no harm to making a death flag. I chose number 1. Trembling inside, I clenched my teeth to try and not say that word out. Your Grace has nothing to do with it. However, I couldn't stop that word in the end and instead came out really weird. Penelope. The Duke opened his mouth. His voice was as cold as ice, holding no warmth whatsoever. There was no change of the story flow no matter how much I tried. Like this, has it already been 6 years since you came to this house? I went back in my memories searching for the right information about the game, setting the heroine on both normal and hard modes. Were at the same age, 18. Penelope had been adopted to the Duke house when she was 12. That meant that yes, he was correct. I remembered the one thing I've forgotten about the game. The 18th birthday is when the coming-of-age ceremony is held for everyone here. That means that there were not much time left until the day of the coming-of-age ceremony for Penelope, right? Then how long do I have? It was when I was working my brain at the suddenly remembered information. Thankfully, the Duke continued with his words without me having to choose one of the 3 choices. I don't know if you know, but it's not easy to step a foot in this house. Only the ones who've proved that they can be of use to our house can go through the gates of our Eckhart mansion after several strict inspections. I didn't hesitate or save anything to provide you support. I accepted everything even after seeing you in your luxurious life doing inexcusable things. However, I can't seem to figure out what good you have brought to our family these past 6 years. True, I would have held a sliver of his interest if I at least looked like his blood-related daughter in appearance. However, Penelope's hair and eye color turned into a color too different from the right shade of pink and the color blue. I wanted to nod while saying that his words were all true. However, my body didn't move an inch after the Duke started speaking from the system controlling my body. The white box which had disappeared from my silence popped up again once. So what do you expect me to do? Are you going to kick me out of this house now too? I'm not the one at fault. 3. Kneel down. Finally, I was glad to see an actually normal answer I could choose without hesitation. It was an excitement I've never felt since coming to this place. I knew it wouldn't, but just in case they disappeared, I quickly pressed on 3. My body was automatically moved to kneel down from some kind of force, kicking my back side of the legs hard and pushing my shoulders downwards. Why is it so strong? I was expecting this, but it hurt more than expected. That my eyes slightly watered. You, what are you doing? The Duke seemed more shocked from the thud sound than I was. His eyes widened. I never chose this as my decision when I was playing this. I mean, it didn't make sense. Why would a cheap gourd kneel down? I don't know if the producer was lazy or thought it was a waste of time, but they made the next decision overlap with the choices in normal mode. 1 is me kneeling down, the only way to make you satisfied. 2. Glare with no words. 3. I'm sorry for everything, Father. I hurriedly pressed on 3 like I did before. I'm sorry for everything, Father. The voice that came out of my mouth was loud, probably because I chose 3 as if I was certain and confident 3 was it. What? The Duke asked as if nothing made sense. It was then the white box which was now familiar to me popped up. Hidden Quest: The Lost Title of a Father. Mission complete. As a reward, the function choices on or off is given. Do you want to off the choices, yes or no? With nothing holding me back, I clicked on the yes without hesitation. The choices is now off. If you wish to see the choices again, shout choices on. And finally that annoying white square box disappeared completely from my view. Awesome, I celebrated inwardly while clenching my hands into a fist. The hidden function choices on or off had permitted me to call the Duke father. If I choose off for the choices in the game, the lines are gone, and only the number 1, 2, and 3 are the only ones shown on screen. At times the simple replies or the answers could be typed with the phone keyboard. By simple answer or replies I meant yes or no, the characters' names, and etc. It was an easy function to gain in the game when it's played on normal mode. I think the purpose of it is to prevent the repeating situations depended on by the lines chosen, and also to project the flexibility of the game, and the encouraging speedy play. However, even with the given function I rarely used them. There was no use of using it, that was how easy and fast the normal mode was. That's why I didn't pay much attention to this scene in the hard mode. It was because I only chose the aggressive lines. I didn't know the hard mode would work the same as the normal mode. I wasn't able to get the choices on or off function due to me choosing the wrong lines, but it wasn't a needed function to me who was addicted in choosing the right lines for the villainess. I didn't know back then that the addiction would become a poison to me later on, and that later on would be right now. I heaved a sigh at my foolishness back then as I recited the words by my will and not from the 3 lines I had to choose from before. Hearing the words coming out of my mouth by my will was so touching to me that I could cry. The tears literally lingered in my eyes from that, and the Duke, who never seemed to have heard the word father from Penelope, didn't seem to believe that I had just said that, as his already widened eyes widened even more. I continued with my words, not the least affected by the Duke's reaction. I apologize for making a fuss during my grounded days. I wasn't able to show the manners as superior to the lower ones, and that caused this scandal to occur. I will deeply reflect on my actions for the remaining time I'm grounded, for there won't be a fuss like this happening next time, so please forgive me this once, Father. I begged, kneeling on the ground. When you think of it, the fuss made in the morning wasn't my fault. A maid bullied me. My fault. My asset was the situation where I had to beg for help from someone. However, the past actions that Penelope had made before I became her had forcefully made me do this without a choice. I was in a situation where I couldn't live without kneeling down. My life wouldn't be in danger right away, even if the Duke doesn't like me. However, if I don't take this situation seriously just because I got the function to turn the choices off, there'll be a high possibility of me taking the route where the penalty would be the only thing waiting for me. It was an obvious thing. Penelope was already grounded right now after creating a fuss and made another one during it too. The so-called young Master Derek was the one to ground me this time. And I know that acting stubborn and aggressive right now would only lower his interest towards me. I understand how immature I've acted up until now. If you give me another chance, I'll do my best to show my use to this family until the day of my coming-of-age ceremony. I didn't move an inch from the ground even after I was done talking. I've never begged kneeling down on the ground, even to my real birth parents. This proves just how shitty this game is. I'm begging with my body down to the ground. Just hurry and say okay already. I was slapping myself mentally straight after waking up. While I was tired, I needed my rest. The Duke looked down on Penelope as if he was seeing some stranger. He wasn't able to easily let out words. His jaws moved but didn't mumble out a sound for a while before he managed to let out a sentence. I get what you're saying. Get up from the floor now. Yes, I got up without hesitation. My legs were too tired to the point that I couldn't keep my position any longer. The words spoken by Eckhart family are heavy. Penelope. The Duke spoke in a low tone, still looking at me. Those words had a lot of meaning to it. Thank you. I won't let you regret forgiving me today, Father. You should leave now. I hurriedly moved my body at the same time his words ended. It was due to me worrying, what if the route changes because I acted slowly. I felt a sharp gaze behind me from when I turned the doorknob and until when I got out to the hall. I felt a refreshing emotion realizing that he gave a different reaction than when I entered the room earlier. However, I decided to not mind any of that. The Duke wasn't a character I needed to raise the interest within, and he was an existence that I won't have to deal with until the ending at the coming-of-age ceremony. I gently closed the door behind me and turned away from it. It was then I'm certain that I told you to live like a mouse without causing any commotion. A cold-toned voice entered my ears. I turned around from the surprise. There by the hall where the shadow took over stood a figure in an unpleasant position. In the dark I could see the shining letters written to show interest 0%. The barely seen black hair and ice-blue eyes. It was the first son of the Duke family, Derek. Emily, a loyal maid who worked for this family for almost 10 years. Derek walked out from the shadow. The man who came across the large hall within a second arrived in front of me in a short time. He looked down at me with a sharp aura held in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at some trash. I didn't do anything wrong, but I had to cower myself from the hatred and disgust I was getting from him. No one wanted to be your personal maid even though we've said we'll pay extra. Out of all those maids, the one maid volunteered to serve you. And I guess today's the end of that, since you went crazy and chased out your one and only personal maid, not knowing your place. I felt unfairness rise within me from Derek's words. When did I go crazy to chase her out? The one who went crazier than I did was that pink head. And it was me who was almost chased out of life eating those rotten food. I wanted to shout due to the annoyance of this situation. What stopped me from doing so was the interest 0% above Derek's head. Hold it in. If it goes any further down than that, I'm dead. I inhaled and exhaled a couple of times and calmed down. Interest 0%. I was already tired after talking with the Duke. Also, since I've only focused on trying to off the choices, I didn't remember much of what happened in this scene in the game. That's why I decided to use some help from the system. Choice on how guess she served you at night in bed. Maybe she have been chased out because she have done something that was worth being chased out. Glare without saying a word. Scanning through the choices, I hurried and mentally shouted choices off. Do you want to off the choices? Yes, no. I hurriedly pressed yes. If I chose one of the three, I would be heading to hell. The time seemed to have passed a lot from me doing all that Derek's gaze grew more colder. How looks like my words aren't like words to you anymore. His gaze was so sharp that he even looked like he was going to kill me. I opened my mouth with no choice. I apologize for the fuss. How many times would I have to beg like this even though I did nothing wrong? I was also a person that I had a thing called pride, so I felt disgusted and bad to bow my head down like a slave. However, this was nothing if the purpose of it was to live. Besides, these people aren't real but just some fake characters from the game. That bitch scratched me and left a scar here. Father, brother, of course a mouse like bitch acts like one, like a beggar. I begged for forgiveness countless of times before I went out to live on my own in my previous life. This was the same situation of that time in my previous life. It wasn't that my life would have been in danger if I didn't beg for apologies like in this game. However, I was pretty young that time that every situation seemed killing to me. That's why I lived begging on the ground to the point my hands seemed to become feet. Comparing that to this wasn't something that I could find unfair of. Penelope did create major fuss unlike I did. I don't know if it's due to my experience in my past life that apologizing all my life to live seemed really easy to me. This is annoyingly similar. I opened my mouth thinking about the time in my past life. Just like you said, I didn't know my place up until now. What it is my fault that I wasn't able to handle my situation well in the first place, so you don't need to fire her. I was just on my way back to my room after apologizing to Father. Hearing my words, Derek's expression changed to a weird one. His slightly wider blue eyes was refreshing to see. It was the similar reaction to that of the Duke's. I opened my mouth. Repeating these dialogues weren't that hard since I've already said these lines multiples of times. I will live my life so quiet from now on that you won't even notice to mind anything, so please forgive me this once. I bowed my head. Was I too lifeless while talking? I came to realize just how insincere my tone was that it started to worry me now. But he wouldn't slice his sister's neck out of nowhere even though it's in a cruel game. I waited for an answer with a light mind, trusting my thoughts that this wasn't a situation with the cruel psychopathic crown prince involved. I wanted this to end quick and go back to the room. Even standing was a torture now that I think about it. My body's not in the best condition due to the incident in the morning with the maid, and I didn't eat anything after that. Derek spoke after more than 5 minutes, unlike my desire for this situation to end quickly. This once I'll forgive you, just this once. Without giving me a chance to thank him, he added, However, keep in mind that this will be the last time I'll be forgiving you behaving that way." It was a more unpleasing reply than the Duke's reply. I felt relieved that it wasn't an answer related to death like how I expected. But no words of thanks came from my mouth no matter how I tried to force it out. "Yes, this is only for my safety." I bent my back forward and bowed with a disgusting feeling like how I did to the first bastard in my last life. After that I immediately turned to head back to my room. It was then all my head started to hurt as I felt dizzy and nauseous. My sight was blurry. I don't know if it was this sudden relief that came to me from the fact that I didn't die, but all strength left my legs. I soon lost my balance and stumbled. I'm falling. I was getting closer to the floor. Someone roughly grabbed onto my one shoulder. Hey, I felt the force pulling me back up. I turned my head and saw flaming blue pupils right before my eyes. Derek had caught me from me falling. "I've heard that you eaten rotten food." I felt my mentality swooshing back to me as I heard his emotionless voice. He asked when I just stared at him in surprise, "Don't you need a doctor?" My complicated mind settled down in an instant. He knew. He knew that it wasn't Penelope's fault. He knew, but he still tried to push all the responsibility to me and even the maid's wrongdoings. If I didn't ask for forgiveness, he'd probably jump to kill me with no hesitation. I felt like I'd just been dumped with iced water. "No, young master." I snatched my hand out of his. It was an unconscious movement that came from my survival instincts. But soon after that I regretted it. He probably would have felt unpleasant, so I forced a smile on my face. "I've already told you just earlier that I'll do my best for you to not mind me at all. So mind your own business." Then I politely bowed once again and quickly walked away. I would look ridiculous as I was walking down the hall so fast that probably looked as if I was running away from something. However, that is correct. I was scared if he'd take out his sword at me. I couldn't notice from hurrying down the hall towards the stairs. The look on the face of the man remaining behind me. "The first young master." Derek unexpectedly repeated what Penelope said before she left. The bitch couldn't even call the Duke father, but always called him and Reynold brother. The image of her pale face when he caught her from falling wouldn't leave his mind. The blue eyes flashed as he watched Penelope leaving as if she's running away. But soon he turned away as if he's disinterested. Interest 5% over his head sparkled the letters written in white which Penelope failed to notice. I hurried up the stairs into my room. After abruptly closing the door behind me, I straight on jumped onto my bed. My stiff body melted as soon as the soft and squishy mattress came in contact. It was only almost lunch, but it felt as if a whole day has gone by. I inhaled and exhaled a bunch to calm my heart down, which was beating hard due to the nervousness I felt when I was with Derek. A little later, absurd laughs escaped from my mouth. "Ha, look, I'm still alive." It wasn't a useless thing to do when I continuously repeated the game after failing each time. Judging from me being able to call Derek the first young master even though I was panicking a lot at the time. A while later the images of the game popped up in my mind. When I first tried the game in the difficult mode, Derek's interest bar was one of the major concerns, unlike the other characters. When I've increased the interest of his on me by a little through some carefully made decisions, it would go down more on the next choice I'd make. I really didn't know the reason why. Why does his mood change so much in the game? My question was only answered through countless of deaths. Derek hated Penelope so much that he was terrified when she called him brother. That's why whenever I chose one with the word brother in it, the interest would just sink lower. How picky! He's even worse than our oldest bastard. I frowned and complained. Anyways, thanks to that I was able to keep myself alive. Let's never call him brother from now on. I repeated that over a few times in my head. Of course I'm going to try and not face him, but I had to keep that in mind in case some things happen. Thinking about this and that on the bed, I started to feel hazy. I need to eat something. Food is the main source needed for everything. It was lunchtime now. However, from the shock I've gained today, I didn't really feel hungry. Whatever, feeling lazy now, I closed my eyes. Sleeping was the first thing in my mind. Maybe it was because I wanted to escape from reality. Soon after closing my eyes, I drifted to sleep. "Why is this in your room?" A voice colder than the crystals in the midwinter could be heard over the head. Then a loud shout was heard from the side. "Answer, you sneaky bitch, you stole it, Reynold." The Duke warned Reynold, who was spitting out swear words. He didn't seem to hold his anger in with his mouth closed that he started to stomp. What's this? I blankly looked around the space and lowered my head. Small two hands, I could tell right away this was Penelope's dream. Speak, Penelope, how do you have the Gong Nua's necklace? I thought I told you that you can't enter the room. Father, I told you that bitch stole it with no doubt. Even with the Duke's warning, Reynold didn't hold his fury back. Penelope glared deathly at him as she shouted, I didn't steal it. I didn't do anything. Shut up, stop lying. Then why did the gift Father gave to Yvonne come out the drawer in your room? Reynold shouted with the dangling necklace in his hand. It was her first time ever seeing that accessory. Without a doubt, Penelope shouted and refused to admit anything. I don't know, I never went into that room. I saw everything. It was then from the crowd came out a man budging through people. The Duke and Reynold turned around to face him. Butler, I've seen Lady Penelope going up and down the third floor often these few weeks. I've checked just in case, but Lady Yvonne's room door wasn't locked. Everyone's gaze, including the Duke's, turned to the little girl. Even Penelope couldn't see ignore all these gazes, treating them as it's nothing. It wasn't me. She stepped backward. It was true, she went up the third floor often. It was the floor where the least amount of people walked around, and it was also because it was the floor that connected to the pathway to the attic. She only went up there because she didn't want to be with her abusive maid, but not with the intention to steal anything. Even more so if it was something that belonged to the real lady of the Duke family. I really didn't, Father. I never once went into that room. Penelope shouted, looking up at the Duke. She looked at him with the gaze of affection and trust. He was the one who brought her to this place himself, after all. However, the Duke would only ignore her with an icy cold gaze. You butler, lock every room on the third floor securely, especially Yvonne's room. Of course, Your Grace. Also bring the jewelry maker to the mansion tomorrow. Father. Penelope froze and placed her face pale as a white sheet of paper. The Duke didn't say a word to her as he left the place. You should have left the mansion when we told you so, stupid idiot. Reynold whispered after making sure the Duke left. Then he pushed Penelope roughly and followed after the Duke. Trash, Derek coldly muttered, watching Penelope roll on the ground like trashed garbage. The scene changed after that. Penelope visited many stores and bought a monstrous amount of jewelry and accessories. She spent so much of the money that Derek and Reynold would go crazy, saying a bitch who doesn't know her place. And after that she never called the Duke father any longer. The small sound was enough to bring me conscious. I sleepily opened my eyes. Another set of knocks came after getting no reply from me. The knocking seemed to be rushed, which made me realize the anger and impatience of the person knocking. I slowly sat up and opened my mouth. Who? Before I even finished my sentence, the door burst open. Lady, it's me. A bright light came shining in the room from where the door was opened. It was dark in the room, and judging from that, it looked like the sun has already set. My eyes burned due to the sudden light shining in the room and frowned as I turned my gaze to the person who opened the door. Butler, I came here because there was something urgent I had to do. There weren't many times when the butler came to find me in such a hurry. Then I thought I felt my heart drop, even more so from the dream I just had. What urgent thing? Did those brats blame me again? What am I guilty of now? My voice came out shaking very much when I asked the question. The butler explained why he came bursting into my room. I thought it would be best to pick Lady's new personal maid before dinner, so my mind went blank from the words that came out so casually from the mouth of one man. Wait, I raised my hand and stopped him. The butler paused, however he seemed to be displeased with me stopping him because he faintly furrowed his eyebrow. Is that all? The first thing I felt when I heard what the butler said was ridiculously relief. Soon, however, rage started to take over the feeling of relief. The reason why he opened and entered through the door to my room without my permission was just to pick a new maid. I was left dumbfounded at the reason the butler has stated. Butler, I called him with a deep, low voice. Yes, lady, what's your name? Pardon, he asked as if it was an unexpected question. I decided to be big-hearted and repeated my words for him. What is your name? It's Penel, lady. Then what is my name, lady? Why are you asking these questions all of a sudden? He seemed to dislike me asking questions totally not relating to the topic here. His crease between his eyebrows dug deeper. Answer what you're asked. What is my name? You're Penelope Eckhart. He answered, having no other choice. Yes, Penelope Eckhart, a noble. I nodded and applied force when I spoke my name out. Then I continued with my words. I've never heard of any mannered rules that allow others without a last name to just burst in the noble's room without permission. Have you, stupid Penelope? If she was angry with these ignorances and hatred, then she shouldn't have screamed and made a fuss, but use her title and rank as a noble to show the lower ones their place instead. So that they don't see you easy to mistreat you again. Formally adopted noble by the Duke family, and a gong neo at that. What a good title to use in these sorts of cases. It was better than one rich family's unknown whore son. Adding to that a story of a man bursting into a young noble girl's room however they want seems like one case that would happen to commoners. Aren't I right? I smiled innocently after finishing my words. Of course, as expected, the effect was great. Lady the butler shouted in panic, hearing my words which cannot possibly be heard by anyone else. The gaze that once looked down on her trembled, and that was one satisfying sight to see. I erased the smile I put on my face and spoke with a low voice with a serious face. Do I need to point out every single thing you know? My throat hurts. This was an expression mostly used by the high-class nobles who have no higher-class nobles to look up to. For an example, the sword of the Empire Duke Eckhart, who doesn't have to look up upon anyone excluding the royals. I apologize. Lady the butler seemed to have understood the meaning of this as well. He kneeled to the ground immediately, as if him standing stiff and confidentially in front of me just now has never even happened. That I have made a mistake from the urgency in my mind. Please forgive me. Watching this scene made me feel refreshed. The feeling I had since the morning till before I went to sleep was now covered with the refreshing feeling. For a brief second I had a thought maybe this was too much to treat a person this older than I am, but I still didn't tell him to get up. That was because Penelope must have looked up to this person who's been ignoring her the past 6 years. I think I'll be displeased if I had to face you for a little while from now, I said coldly, looking down on the butler. Of course I don't think it's only me who feels that way. I could only let the words I actually wanted to speak when I turned around so my back faces him. So if you have anything you wish to accomplish that involves me, send someone else instead of coming yourself. But lady, the idea of picking the new maid wasn't my yes or no. I coldly cut through his line. All I want to hear from you are either the two words. Yes, I understand, lady, the butler replied with a noticeably creased face. But what about the dinner? I don't need it, so get out. Taking that as my last words to him, I turned on the spot without even seeing the butler rise from the floor. Soon I heard careful footsteps leaving the room. The door closed in a different manner that it was opened. The room was filled with darkness again. I felt a wave of worry going through me right after thinking back to what I just did. What if he reports every single thing to the Duke? Well, what can he do anyways? Even so, there would be nothing he could do. There were nothing I could do right at this moment, and I could repeat what I just did over and over again if it was to help reduce Penelope's feeling of unfairness. Besides, it was just some scolding with words. I didn't make a fuss and throw anything and scream. You could raise your fame while playing the game by improving the relationship with the people around you. That later on helped you to unlock all 5 characters' endings. However, I had no intention on doing it like how you would in the actual game. Since I didn't need to see all the endings, it would be a waste if you waste your emotions on the people that had nothing to do with any of me. Fame my ass, I'm already busy trying to maintain the current interests of the 5 characters to survive. All of these could only be done playing the game. It's too much work when it's reality. I closed my eyes once again, setting all my thoughts aside. It was time to regain my sleeping time that has been interrupted by the butler and Penelope in my dreams. Penelope seemed to be a diligent person, judging from how my eyes opened so easily early in the morning without the help of a maid. This was a surprise when you think back to the personality Penelope had. I got up from the bed and did a light stretching move. Just then, someone knocked the door to my room as if they were waiting for me to wake up this whole time. For a while I sat still on the bed and stared at the door. It was because I was curious if my warning last night had actually taken effect. It became certain that it wasn't the butler knocking, because the room door bursting open even after a while of no reply didn't happen. Who is it? I finally opened my mouth and checked who came in. Lady, it's Reyna. It was the head maid. It seemed like my method I used yesterday had worked. It was a satisfying result. Come in. The door opened and a mid-aged woman entered my room. Have you slept well? Why did you come? I've come for the lady picking the new personal maid. Do you have someone in mind by any chance? There's no way there would be one. I didn't give an answer to the head maid's question, then she opened her mouth again to speak as if this was expected. The next words that came out her mouth was, of course not someone volunteering again. If you don't, then picking a new. Who was the maid who served me before? Are you speaking of Emily? Yes, Emily, I asked, pretending to be curious. Was she fired from the mansion? No, she wasn't, but... Then what is she doing now? Her eyes held questions, seeming to ask why I was asking her such questions. She was punished to do the laundry for 3 months from now, due to her not being able to serve the lady well. Is that so? But why are you? Anxiousness started to show on her face as her mask of confidence started to fall apart. Looks like she knows briefly what happened then, or maybe she was the real agitator hiding behind that maid. I calmly spoke, setting these suspects aside. Tell her to just continue being my personal maid. Pardon me, it's uncomfortable since I don't have anyone to serve me this instant. Even though I pick one, they'll be amateurs until they learn things. If this is the case, the previous one who has experiences would be better. If it was Penelope, she wouldn't have bothered to include these extra information. However, since this is my request, I decided to be more caring to this matter. If you understand, then I'll ask you to bring her up. I'll leave that to you. I smiled at the speechless head maid whose jaws were dropped. However, lady, the second young master Reynold also punished that child from her mistreatment to the lady. So you can? I stopped her from her excuses and asked. Then the head maid's mouth shut, being once again speechless. This was going well. It's only been 2 days and people in this house never did as I told them to do right away. I had to either scold or warn them. Is it always like this? The play with the ranks and titles were a must in a novel or a movie. However, in the normal mode it wasn't really like that when you remember how all the people in the mansion would just listen to the heroine and does whatever she asks for. I started to feel annoyed not even a minute after I decided to think of this as a positive change. It's best if you just do as I say when I tell you to. I even said I'll ask you to, and I'll leave that to you in the sentence. These words added the meaning of trust and plead in the sentence. Did I really had to behave like how Penelope did? I told you that this is uncomfortable. If I told you to, then bring her up here. Or does the head maid want to serve me personally instead? Then I'll bring her up after I ask for his grace's permission, lady. It was a statement that she wouldn't do as I say till the end. I laughed from the ridiculous situation. No, you don't need to. I'll go see father right now myself. I stood up from the spot. While I'm at it, I'll tell him on what exactly happened yesterday in detail, then I'll reveal that I've forgiven Emily. Where is father right now, lady? The head maid's eyes widened when she saw me ready to go out any time. The case that had happened yesterday has been taken care of with a small punishment of 1 maid, but if I were to get involved, then things could get complicated. She abused the gongnu, and one of the sons of the Duke witnessed it. His Grace has left to the royal palace earlier. Is that so? Then later when he comes back I'll bring Emily right away. The head maid spoke in a panicked voice, worried if I'd go find father. I wasn't able to understand lady's mercy right away. Being so old, I apologize. Watching the bowing head maid didn't make me feel refreshed but rather bitter. I wasn't going to raise my fame points by getting closer to people around me, but I felt like the fame I had right at this moment was reaching the negative. Should I bring Emily right now, lady? The head maid suggested, panicked but carefully. I hope this kind of thing doesn't happen again, Reina. I spoke to her, thinking about how my day's already ruined. You may leave. Emily came into my room with breakfast in hand. She must have heard something intense from the head maid because she came up so soon after Reina left. Lady, I'll prepare the breakfast. Emily's hands that was setting the food in front of me shook badly. She seemed to have suffered a lot mentally from what happened yesterday. It seemed like my crazy action of eating the rotten food last time was worth it because the food on the plates looked okay today. Fresh salad and juicy steak looks okay on the outside. I didn't feel like eating it though, probably because of the shock my body felt eating the rotten food. I slowly brought the food to my mouth, staring at Emily, who was standing stiffly beside me. Her eyes couldn't meet my eyes. Is she feeling any guilt though? She probably is dying to know why I chose her to be my personal maid again. Without even finishing half of the food given to me, I called for Emily. Emily, yes, lady. She, who was deep in her thoughts, jumped in surprise as she answered in a loud voice. I reached one hand out to her. Hand me the needle. What, the needle you used to poke me with every morning? Emily reacted a second later. She figured what I was talking about. She would inhale sharply, then kneel down with a pale face. Lady, I am sorry, forgive me, she apologized while smashing her head on the ground. Really, why did she do such thing if she was going to apologize like this? I felt ridiculed and at the same time, disgusted that I wasn't the person she should be apologizing to right now. I felt my mindset of trying to treat her better being cast off, and when it did, a dangerously sharp voice came out my mouth. Didn't you hear from the head maid? I hate speaking of something twice. Lady, hand me the needle. Emily, who was trembling so hard, looked as if she'd collapse any minute. However, she started to go through her hair, which was tied up. Soon a giant needle was seen in her hand, which came out of her hair, nicely hidden now, was it? Of course, Penelope was always the victim. They were this intense she would have wanted to scream at the maid who'd always abuse her but couldn't due to her having no evidence. Here Emily handed me the needle with her trembling hands. I stared down at the object that had continuously hurt Penelope up until now. It was a mere metal piece that wasn't even that big. However, yesterday I realized how painful this thin and little needle could provide a person. How painful would it have been for her? No one would have noticed, even though your arms go weak with bloody scar marks due to the pain you'd feel every morning when you wake up. Raise your head. I clenched my teeth and commanded. Emily hesitantly raised her head. Despair could be seen in her wavering eyes, as she was probably thinking about things she would experience now from the violent gongyu. Watch this closely, Emily. I reached my hand without the needle out in front of Emily. It was one fragile-looking milky white hand without a scar. It was flipped so the back of the hand was facing the ceiling. Then I planted the needle on it with the needle Emily handed me without hesitation. Lady, it was me who was poked deep with the needle, but it was Emily who screamed as if she was the one who got poked instead. Then I plucked out the needle that was planted halfway in my hand. Blood drops started to from on the piercing. I prepared myself for this, but it really hurt. It was to the point I would get teary-eyed. But I didn't show it on the face as I smashed the needle back into my hand close to where I poked myself a moment ago. This time I couldn't endure the pain as I let out a sound. Lady, Emily breathed hard as if she was having a panic attack. Emily, not knowing what to do, let out tears at my reckless actions. It was a scene quite funny to watch. What she's so scared about when she did things far worse than this before. Lady, why are you doing this? No need to cry like that, Emily, since this is the scars you made on me. I replied in a gentle tone. Then her face expression went blank. It may be 2 at this moment, but it could always become 3, 4, and 5, maybe even more. Emily stopped breathing at my words. Her trembling stopped as well. I'm going to accept whatever you'll do to me without having a single doubt on you from now on. The bathed water you'll be preparing, clothes, food, everything. Lady, the more you do, more the scars that'll appear on this hand. It'll be totally visible someday. If then wouldn't a day come when someone notices it? There would be people wondering who could be the abuser who doesn't know their place to ignore the member of the Eckhart family. To give an example, just like Brother Reynold. I verbally attacked Emily while smiling like a blooming flower. I'm only saying that all these depends on your attitude. My personal maid didn't give an answer to my threatening words. Her face was so pale to the point even I thought she was choked by someone just now. Get up now. You must do your job now that your master has finished her food. I took back the arm that I reached for her. I then turned my gaze to the big window by the table. Emily stood up from the spot abruptly after a while more of kneeling down. Then she started cleaning the table with the robotic speed and skills she's fast to learn, it seems. It was fortunate. I think I could easily use her now and in the future. The way people will look at me would have been the same even if I did get a new person to be my personal maid. I couldn't stay still doing nothing forever, so I decided to make allies who I could use. My personal maid who lead abuse on Penelope, and at the right timing a chance was given to me. I also liked Emily's personality of straight on doing what she's told to do without any question. I was watching Emily with such thought until she finished organizing the table fast. It was then the door opened all of a sudden with so much force that I wondered how the door didn't break. From that I turned my gaze in surprise. The hair with the lovely shade of pink fluttered in the air. Reynold Eckhart was glaring at me with a frown on his face. He hurried in the room. The bar that showed interest -3% was so close to me. Just what are you planning on doing? Reynold, who was approaching me with, creating a dark aura, frowned even more and gave a deathly aura when he witnessed Emily standing by the table. You young master. Emily froze and spot her face pale. I hurried looked at the table. Every dishes were on a tray and only a fork was still set in front of me. I had a terrible feeling about this situation, so I grabbed the fork and set it on the tray. I looked around me if there were anything that could be used as a weapon, and spoke after I confirmed that there weren't anything that dangerous. "You should leave now, Emily." She abruptly raised the tray from the table, as if she waited for me to say this. However, Reynold shouted when she did so, "Don't you dare leave, hurry," I said, looking at Emily as if telling her to leave before the aggressive young master starts to fuss around. Emily seemed to have understood the meaning of my words because she hurriedly left the room. She looked like me yesterday, running away crazily from Derek to survive. Emily finally left when Reynold's displeased gaze fixed on me. "Answer, what are you planning that you do this?" I thought of what to say for a moment. Penelope always talked informally to Reynold in the game. Reynold was 2 years older than Penelope. It was understandable if they fought like a cat fighting a dog, since the two didn't have a major age gap. Just like how the second bastard in the house and I are like. To be accurate, he abused me and I was always the one getting beaten. I considered talking formally to Reynold like I speak to Derek due to him being older than me, but that thought came to an end. It would funny if a person who spoke to him informally just yesterday speaks formally to him now. "Did you decide to straight on ignore my words?" Reynold asked displeasingly when I didn't reply. "Look at that, how impatient," I replied him, like how Penelope would. "What is this that I did? Why are you saying that you're going to use that bitch as your personal maid again?" Interest -3 sparkled dangerously above the fluttering pink pretty hair. What should I answer with to avoid the death flag? I thought on switching the choices on but decided not to. No, even if I do there would only be useless lines. I gulped, staring at Reynold, huffing in fury. If it was Penelope, she would definitely say "they're not your business" or "get out of my room," which would bring her closer to her death. That's nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry about that. However, I wasn't Penelope, so I slightly sugarcoated those words. Renlad wouldn't take in anything I say nicely anyway. I sugarcoated those words though, so I thought it was going to be enough to deal with the situation. However, it seemed to have done the opposite effect of what was expected, because the emotion in Reynold's gaze turned from dark to deathly. "Feeding her master rotten food is nothing to worry about, do you know that's? There are boundaries of annihilating an Eckhart. How dare she, a mere lowly one, not knowing her place? We don't need that kind of maid in the mansion. There are countless others who are begging to work here until they die, even without being paid," Reynold shouted. I, who was going to conclude all this by saying "this is nothing to make a fuss about," became speechless at his unexpected reaction. Looking at him, being angrier than I, the victim was, made me laugh. "How dare you, a mere lowly one, not knowing your place?" It was always the line Reynold would say to Penelope. "Do you laugh in this situation?" he said, frowning when I smirked for a brief moment. "Just how lowly were you being seen by others that you are going through these insults?" "Yeah, that's right. Just like you asked, how did people see the Duke's daughter so lowly that none of the workers here would right away listen to a single word I say?" I calmed myself down, knowing if I said that I would be dead. "I met Father because of the incident yesterday." I looked at him with a stage colder eyes. "Yes, Father probably agreed, since I told him we had to fire that bitch immediately," Reynold confidently added with a puffed chest, as if he was proud of his actions. Did he want a compliment or something from his fake younger sister who he hated up until now? Unfortunate for him, I didn't plan on doing so, Father, and the older brother desired not to fire Emily. What? Reynolds' blue eyes widened when I continued with a calm tone. "Father and brother did. And you aren't going to be the male lead. I'll choose C and ending with so don't you worry." I once again told him to take his mind off this matter. "So you don't need to mind my business, Reynold. I'll take care of my business myself. Just take your mind off my things, insult me or whatever, and leave." "I have to take a shower. Can you leave now?" I said, glimpsing at the room door. Reynold frowned. I was surprised because it was an expression I've never seen in the game before. And at the same time my heart dropped in a sudden thought that was brought up in my mind. Wait, is the interest level going to drop lower now? No, I didn't act like how Penelope did in front of Reynold. Instead, I carefully chose the words he would accept. But why? It was then the empty gauge bar above Reynolds' lovely pink hair started to sparkle. Interest 3%. What the? My mind went blank. Why did it just rise? It rose 6%. At that I was dumbfounded as I kept looking back and forth at the gauge bar and Reynold. It was then when Reynold opened his mouth and muttered, "I'm the idiot here to show consideration for you even for a short moment." The blue eyes that glared at me seemed to hold heavy sadness. He walked towards the door. After finishing his sentence, I was probably seeing things. I decided that it was me seeing things while watching him leave the room. The door slammed shut and silence followed. Soon after that I supported myself, leaning an elbow on the table, and started to think. Something felt weird. It was not bad seeing the characters whom I thought I had no hopes and interest rate rising with my own 2 eyes. Are my lines better now with the choices turned off, since not all of the interest rate of the brothers who hates me dropped to a negative? I should keep it off all the time. I stood up from the spot after deciding on that it wasn't a lie when told Reynold that I had to shower. While pulling on a string that signals the maids to come up, a thought went through my head. That I couldn't call Reynold a negative anymore. The timeout that seemed as if it would last forever stopped sooner than I thought it would. An invitation from the palace. Yes, lady, the eldest young master told me to tell the lady to prepare for it. The eldest young? No, the eldest brother did. I stopped myself from calling him the eldest young master like how the workers here calls him, and reminded myself to call him the eldest brother in front of them. I was this family's daughter, the youngest member after all. Anyways, to think Derek actually told me to do so. He didn't tell me directly, but this meant the end of my timeout. This is the invitation. Lady Emily handed me the invitation in mannered way. The name Penelope was written the paper that had the golden dragon that was the symbol of the royals drawn on it. The second prince's birthday ceremony. It was tomorrow. I should hurry and prepare for it. Even while muttering that, I still didn't feel so glad that my timeout was over. The days were so nice during the timeout without having to face the 2 brothers and being served well by Emily. Basing on the game plot, Derek, Reynold, and I would continue to intervene with each other's business. Wait. I was thinking about the events that will occur in the future when a sudden thought interrupted. If I'm going to the palace, then I might see the crown prince. No, not even might. It's certain there wasn't a scene that showed Penelope going to the palace, but I was sure about the fact that I'll be meeting the crown prince because it was the first episode of the crown prince route. I subconsciously screamed as I remembered the illustration where the crown prince sliced Penelope's neck multiple times. No, Lady Emily looked back at me in surprise. I mustn't go. Should I just say that I'm sick so I can't go? That was the only choice left if I were to avoid that crazy brat. I panicked as I asked Emily, who looked down, probably thinking if she did anything wrong. Emily is father also attending the ceremony tomorrow. His Grace is busy with work tomorrow, so the first young master is escorting the lady there. I felt depressed. If I didn't want to go to the ceremony, then I'll have to talk to not the Duke but Derek, but if I do, then there's a risk of his interest rate decreasing. I would have tried gambling if it was Reynold instead. I let out a sigh thinking back to Reynold's interest rate that just rose from a negative. I was busy enough already, even trying to keep it at 0%. I shouldn't even think to take risk by gambling against Derek. Lady, are you okay? You've turned pale, Emily cautiously asked, glimpsing at my serious facial expression. Leave the room, I have something to think about. I gestured with my hand, sounding annoyed. I let out a sigh as soon as she left the room. I'll die when I don't go, and I'll die when I do go. How insane is this game? I started to miss my heavenly days during my timeout. It'll be fine if I avoid him the best I can. Right, I thought back to how the story flowed, but there were nothing much to remember. Meet the crown prince at the maze in the palace garden, then die before a proper conversation starts again and again. I'm not exaggerating when I say I had to press the reset button every 5 seconds. I think just not attending, saying I'm sick, would be the best. It was then when a smart idea popped up in my mind. Should I try dying? It isn't a bad idea when you think about it. I mean, no one knows. I might be able to go back to my world if I die in this world. What is the system going to do about it when the player reached the game over? Giving up fast would be better than trying to reach the ending of the game with one of the characters who I have no hopes in. Also, this game has the reset button. It even sounds angelic. Reset button, of course. There aren't back button or other icons visible, even though it did on the phone screen when playing the game. The only thing I could see at the moment is the square chart with the choices, but wouldn't a reset button exist when the choices on-off system exists? Why didn't I think of this before? As long as there's a reset button, it's best if I take everything face to face. Awesome. Let's see the crown prince and die. I was half dead from waking up earlier than usual and getting all the treatments. I took a bath in a tub of water mixed with milk and fragrance extract, then got some massages and did both a face and body mask. This boring steps were repeated multiple times. I was half dead when I got out the bathroom and was sitting at the makeup table. However, that wasn't all. Lady, how is this dress? This was bought last time and weren't worn once, so it's new. How about this earring? This should go well with the dress. I think tying half of your hair would be better than tying them all up. What do you think? How do you want your makeup? They kept on asking, holding me down. Do they actually hate Penelope? They were more excited than I was. I raised my head and looked in the mirror. It seemed like all the treatments I got this morning did their work because my face was glowing even more than usual. Well, it surely would be fun to decorate a face like this. I nodded, understanding why they react this way, and spoke. Take that dress back and bring the one that covers all my neck. I'll wear the least amount of accessories I should wear and take it easy on all the others too. The maids jumped in shock from my words, then added, But lady, it's a party, the one at the royal palace. At that the words also seemed to ask, won't you need to dress up the prettier than others? The reddish-pink dress that would widely make my neckline visible that the maids brought surely would go well with Penelope's crimson-pink hair. And the accessories that looked like it was a set with the dress would complement Penelope's splendid beauty, but I wasn't going to the palace to show off the beauty like a peacock would. But then I couldn't possibly say that I was going there to die, so I just babbled things out like how Penelope would. You don't need to try too hard, just do as I say. The maids couldn't convince me longer after hearing my cool tone of voice as they walked towards the dress room with a saddened face. The 3 dresses that the maids later brought were all decorated calm, unlike the last dress. This one. The dress I picked was the dark green evening dress. It covered my collarbones, and it was the color of dark green, which didn't pop out much. I wore the dress and forced the maids in to do my makeup as lightly as possible. I wore small emerald-colored earrings that resembled Penelope's eyes and called it at that. After the makeover I looked in the mirror and saw a girl so virtuous that I thought I was going to the church to pray instead of going to a fancy party. This would be enough to be almost unseen, unlike me, whose face was bright with satisfaction. The maids' expressions were all dark. Only Emily stay and the rest can leave now. I ordered them to leave, then I asked for one more thing from my personal maid. Emily, could you prepare the gloves that are the same color of the dress? Lady, you're going to wear the gloves as well. If I do, then it'd be perfect. Emily fidgeted as if she wanted to stop me from that also. Then what? I can't go showing this to everyone, I said, showing the needle marks on my hand. The needle marks were faint, and it was now hardly visible. However, there could always be some nobles with keen eyesight to notice this. Emily's face went pale as soon as I showed her. Hurry and bring it. Okay, I clicked my tongue, watching her leave in panic. There were moments where she became a little hesitant after treating her a little well. These days there were needs to make her feel nervous when facing me. Later the preparation was done with me putting on my gloves. Derek scanned me from my head to my toe and made a face seeming to say, this is rare. It seems like you've turned more human-like these past days of your time out. It was our first meeting each other's in days, but his attitude on Penelope still stayed the same. However, I didn't have time to get upset about it. It was because of the shining gauge bar over his head. Interest 5%. What the when did it go up? His interest on me has risen without me even knowing it. 5%. At that I was a little dumbfounded. If his interest towards me rises when he didn't see me, just how much does he hate Penelope? If I knew about this earlier, then I would have spoken to him about not going from being sick. I started to regret my decision. But it was too late. The fancy carriage with the symbol of Eckhart on it was standing in front of the main entrance. I bowed slightly as a greeting, then reached my hand out to the bodyguard standing nearby. It was because the carriage was higher than I thought. I couldn't see what Derek was doing since I was busy with lifting my dress up to get on the carriage. It was when I successfully got up the carriage and turned around to look at Derek. He had his hand stretched forward, looking at me with a stiff face. What's up with him? I tilted my head in confusion of what he was doing. But we needed to hurry up and start going if we want to be at the ceremony on time. There was no way he'd ride the same carriage as the carriage I was on, so I waited for the carriage door to close. But then Derek, who was frozen in place, got in the carriage. What's happening? Why is he climbing up in here? I searched through my memories to see if I'd done anything wrong. However, nothing came up into my mind. It was obvious because we met today just now and only just said hello. While I was doing that, Derek sat down on the seat on the opposite side of where I was sitting. You're riding with me? His brows creased from my questioning. You have a problem with that? No, it's not that. What's wrong with you? You've never done anything like this before. I shook my head, making sure I didn't say that out loud. But even though I said that, his crease didn't leave his face. If you have a problem, you ride the other carriage, he said with a cold tone. I glimpsed out the carriage window, actually considering to do as he suggested. However, he already closed the carriage door while he was coming in, so it would look funny if I opened it again and left. I don't dislike it. I looked back at Derek and forced the half-hearted words out of me like it. And then I carefully glimpsed at Derek to see his reaction. He who glared at me for a moment turned his head to the side. I mean, if you dislike this that much, why are you making it awkward and uncomfortable for both of us? Is this a new way to annoy Penelope? I was dumbfounded at his figure letting out all the cold aura. But that soon changed when I took a look above his head. Interest 6%, it went up by 1%. I was staring at it wide-eyed when the carriage started moving. Yeah, what could possibly happen in the carriage? I had the whole 6% interest with me. There wouldn't possibly be a case that will make this 6% drop in such a short time in the carriage. Remembering the words, if you can't avoid it, enjoy it, I decided to take it in as a good thing. However, soon after departing, I regretted riding the same carriage with Derek. Its suffocating saved me. It seemed like eternity until we finally arrived at the palace. It was only a moment of time where I could just watch the cold, handsome man sitting with his arms and legs crossed. In the silent carriage existed only silence, which made me super self-conscious to even breathe properly. I decided to try opening the window when I couldn't take it anymore, but Derek stared at me as soon as I started to move, so I couldn't do a thing. When I flinched even just a little after that, he would open his closed eyes abruptly and glare at me. Why are you looking at me like that? I sweated, glimpsing at the interest 6% once a while. I shouted in delight mentally when the carriage stopped at the palace. I could finally escape this carriage of death. I'll hurry and get out, then take in some fresh air. But before that happened, Derek got up so suddenly as soon as the carriage stopped. After he would open the door before me and get out, then take it. Derek reached one hand out to me, who got up with my dress held up with my hands. Did you eat something weird? I blankly stared at Derek, who was trying to escort me with wide eyes. After a while he frowned. What are you doing? Aren't you going to get down? I came back to my senses and looked around me. The gazes of the nobles who also just arrived were all looking this way. Thank you, I hurried, took Derek's hand and got off the carriage with my hand on his. We walked up the stairs to the ballroom. Entering young Master Derek Eckhart and Gongyu Penelope Eckhart from the Eckhart family. It was around when the giant door to the ballroom opened, following the loud shout of the servant. Don't be rash. Derek's cold words reached my ears. You didn't forget that your timeout has just ended yesterday, have you? If you make a fuss again, then it won't end just with some timeout. My feelings of excitement disappeared from his words. I wanted to talk back to Derek's displeasing words, but I held it back. Okay, I'll be careful. I put my effort in making a smile. While I spoke, after my reply, Derek turned his face away from me. I pouted at the time he wasn't looking. The party held at the palace went by really smooth. In other words, it was very boring. Right after we entered, Derek left my side and was now busy greeting other people. Compared to that, there were no one coming to talk to me. It seemed like the rumors of me making a fuss did a great effect. I looked around to see the noble ladies of Penelope's age dancing and whispering as a group. I watched the scene in a corner where not much people passed by. I'm not lonely. This is definitely not brainwashing. Really, I had a clear reason why I came here, and I might be able to escape this horrible place if I succeed. Just when is that damn crown prince coming? More people were glimpsing and gossiping about me as time passed. It was when I thought I reached the limit of taking in all the stares, entering Her Majesty the Empress and His Highness the Second Prince. It was finally the start of the actual event that happens in this chapter of the game. The nobles who were giggling and talking all either bowed, kneeled to the ground facing the entrance. I also bowed, following what all the others were doing. The Empress and the Second Prince did power walking in a confident pose down the red carpet, and it seemed like they were saying, "We are the royals." The golden hair, which was the symbolism of the royals, shined under the bright light of the ballroom. They walked across the ballroom to the stairs, then walked up the stairs where the seats where only the royals had the rights to sit. I, who was watching the whole scene, was surprised at the sight of the Second Prince sitting on one chair. Isn't that the seat for the Crown Prince? The seat the Second Prince sat on was the seat in the middle, which was located higher up than the other chairs. The golden throne with a fancy golden dragon decoration, it was the seat for the Emperor. However, the Emperor almost never showed up in the game, so normally the Crown Prince would sit on it instead. But why is it the Second Prince? I was dumbfounded with the Empress and the Second Prince being so calm when they did something like that. It was as if it was totally a normal thing to happen in the first place. Is it allowed because it's the second prince's birthday everyone may rise? The second prince who sat on the seat commanded the people rose up as commanded. I thank you all for attending to my birthday ceremony even when I'm sure everyone must be busy. There's not much prepared for today, but I hope everyone to have a great time. With the second prince's speech finished, the party officially began. No, it was going to be until a loud noise came from the entrance all of a sudden. What's happening? The nobles all turned to face where the noise came from and started to chatter. A figure walked through the crowd into the ballroom. The sound of the footsteps could be heard at the same time. The sound of something being dragged was also heard. It's the crown prince, someone shouted. I hurriedly turned to look at that shout. Elegant blonde hair that seemed like it was made with real gold swayed in the air, the shining golden hair of the empress, and the second prince now seemed to be a joke. The blonde golden-haired man with a red cape fluttering behind was the one who really was shining to the eyes. Isn't that a person? That's people who stood close to the crown prince started to scream. I didn't realize from being distracted by the crown prince's appearance that's something he dragged in here with him was a person with absolutely no movements. Happy birthday, dear brother. The crown prince who reached the stairs tossed the person in his hand. Brother Crown Prince. The empress got up from the spot and pointed at the crown prince. What disgraceful thing are you doing? How is a big brother attending his little brother's birthday ceremony? A disgraceful thing to do, mother. You're a crown prince, and yet you do this horrible thing at a place where you're not even invited. The empress' face ignited bright red and trembled, not allowing herself speak about a person who was dragged in here. What do you mean I wasn't invited? Those words are saddening. Who are you to come to a place like this? It's because I was invited that I set aside all my duties to come running here. The crown prince shrugged sarcastically. He didn't look sad at all, judging by his face. I couldn't understand the situation of the two. Is the empress not the crown prince's birth mother? While I was thinking that, the crown prince added, but the servant who brought the invitation was too immature. The crown prince then bent down low and got up as he forcefully pulled the dragged body by the hair so that he was halfway standing. His face wasn't shown due to the black mask, however, seeming from the dark and fitting clothes he was wearing, he seemed like a murderer. He'd not give me the invitation I told him to give, but do other things instead, so I taught him a little lesson. Why didn't you pick more proper servant, little brother? It was then the crown prince used his free hand to slide his sword out the right away, sliced the neck of the murderer. Blood started to spurt out like a water fountain. I'll replace my gift to you with this. The crown prince tossed the head to the second prince's foot. The ballroom was filled with the loud scream of the empress. The head of a person's what was rolling like a ball on the floor. The second prince's face was pale as if he was going to faint any moment, and couldn't speak a word. Send the servant like him again with the invitation if you want a gift from me again. The ballroom filled with shocked people. Only the crown prince smiled. Within all those people his keen and sharp smile resembled the lion from the hell. He left the room as quickly as he did when he entered the ballroom, only leaving us with shock and fear. The crown prince was completely out of sight when the people letting out their breaths that they were holding back until now could be heard. It was the same for me. What I shuffled through my memories, grabbing onto my chest. Something like this really never happened in the game. No matter how much I thought back about the game, this kind of huge incident never once happened. It was too huge for it to be not mentioned in the game, like about the needle marks on Penelope. The crown prince, who was not in a great relationship with his brother, the second prince, leaves the ballroom displeased with the small incident. This was all that was mentioned. How is this a small incident, you crazy game? I panicked mentally, looking at the servants cleaning up the blood and the corpse. It was then when a white box popped into view. The episode The Crown Prince with the Iron Blood Callisto Regulus has begun. Would you like to go to the maze garden? Yes, no. I thought about it for a while. The crown prince I saw was far crazier than how I imagined him to be, which made me doubt a little. I think I'd get sliced the second we meet. However, the fear for death is only a second long. I came here to die anyway. If I endure it once this time, then I might be able to go back, and I also had an insurance with me called Reset. If I really do die and not go back, then I can always click the reset button. Thinking that, I calmed down my trembling hand and pressed on yes. Then everywhere around me turned white. The moment I opened my eyes again, I was standing at the entrance of the maze garden. This is useful. I was actually quite worried because I tend to get lost often, but I didn't know it had the teleporting system just like the game. Now let's march to death. I stepped in the maze garden already prepared. Thankfully I didn't get lost at all in the maze. Maybe it's the system being mannered because the lights only lit up on the path I should be taking. I walked through the big maze for a while following the lights. How much longer? I've walked for quite a long time, but the lights didn't seem like it was going to turn off somewhere. About when my foot was starting to hurt from wearing the high heels, a light on the far distance from me that was sparkling more than the other lights were could be seen. It was finally the end. I reached that end, then took a turn. The place was very spacious with a small water fountain with a bench you could sit and rest on. What the where is he? Looking around me, I could see no other lights that were on. I was pretty sure that this was the end of the maze. However, no matter how much I looked around me, there were no hints of the Crown Prince. I tilted my head, then hesitantly walked towards the water fountain. Then I felt something cold and heavy by my neck. I wondered what mouse it was that was wandering places. The Crown Prince walked towards me, his sword circling my neck. Sting with the sensation of my flesh being sliced, something hot dripped down. But I wasn't able to realize that I'd been cut. Isn't this the Eckhart's crazy fuss maker dog? Brilliant golden hair with the moonlight reflecting on it, and the crimson red eyes that seemed to be soaked in blood. The Crown Prince, who was staring at me in interest, smiled with a ghostly expression. However, that only lasted a moment. To think you'd come and follow after witnessing the scene at the ballroom. Seems like you have a death wish. I felt goosebumps from the Crown Prince's expression, suddenly turning emotionless. Speak, why did you follow me like a sneaky mouse with the sword dug deeper into my skin? But what felt more stinging was the deathly aura directed at me. Then I realized that the Crown Prince is going to kill me right now. Reset button. I wandered around with my eyes trying to find the reset button. Though I'm going to die anyway, it would be nice if I knew where it was before I die. Judging from you having no answer to my question, shall you start your last farewell to your brothers? However, wherever I looked, I'll be nice and deliver them the Eckhart's your last words. The reset button was not seen anywhere. Reset, where's the reset? Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.